Hi, this is Fran with Stampendous, and I'm here to show you our Poised Peacock stamp with die set. And as you can see here, the peacock has one beautiful array of feathers, or a double one, or here using the whole array in a full pop-up. So let me show you some different ways to make the most of your Poised Peacock set. The cling rubber stamp set comes with a stencil that's just a peacock patterning, and we show a diagram of it next to the little orange corner that highlights the stencil. And then the dies are separate, and you get all of these different shapes that will cut right up close to all the edges, and I'll show you some more tips about that. The stencil is hard to see when it's nice and clean, but soon we'll be able to see what happens as we begin to put some of the ink through it. So I'm just going to tape this down with some removable tape just to make sure it stays in place. And then one of the options for a whole array of colors is an ink pad like this Splendor one, and these are pigments. And if you choose to use the Dreamweaver stencil brushes, it will be a quick and easy way to cover a large area. And let's try a variety of colors on here. I'm going to start with my purples. So test and see what you've got on your brush before you start through the stencil. And yeah, I'm liking how quick this goes. And this will let me get some interesting light and dark patterning that kind of just disappears in and out even. And then if I want to keep that brush for my purples, I'm going to switch to a larger brush and add some blues. You want to work some color up into the bristles, and then a circular motion here should begin to fill in, and this will let me blend these two colors together, which is kind of nice. I'm going to shift back and forth with this brush to some greens next, since in this case I don't mind my colors kind of blending together. Okay, I think that came out quite fun and just shows you a nice way to get some soft color. And perhaps you like it exactly like that with the whites, but you know, it might be nice to, if I have only soft color on this, to come back in and go over all of it just a little bit with some more of the blue or green. I was thinking it would also be fun to do this over a print. So let's just try some here on this print that's got some light colors to it. I'm just switching back and forth between my blues and greens, knowing that my brush can get washed out later. Soap and water is all it needs, and then be sure and let it dry before you use it again, especially with other colors, and that way it won't dilute whatever colors you're working with. But there's nothing like a great big brush like this to make this stencil work very quick. Okay, that's very fun, and since I'm going to trim it down, I didn't worry about that edge. And this pattern is one that you can line it up and overlap to make another larger area. So we've designed it to work that way in the overlap either way, top to bottom or a little bit easier side to side. Your stencil will clean up easily from the pigment inks with a simple wet wipe. If you want to do some coloring with your Copic markers, I'm using our mixed media white paper, and I've selected an array of colors here that we will list for you. And often I like to just show them at the bottom of my piece, and then I've got a record of it here. And So I wanted to mention that when I did these, I found that we've got all of these little frilly edges, and when we created the die shapes, we made it cut into that edge, so you don't have to worry about all of the little edges. But when you cut this piece here that's going to give you the plumage from the tail, you can see that it's going to cut around all the little curls, but if you haven't colored that area, you will be seeing a little bit of white. And in most cases, if you put it on a card like this, of course, with a white background, you're not going to notice it. And with the peacock itself, you can see it cuts out all the way around and even cuts the details of the feet. And we've made it stronger by making that a solid area on the die. But now let me show you, if with your markers you want to take perhaps a light color, and again, this is hard to think about sometimes when you're thinking about all your placement of color, but let's say with this single peacock feather, you can see where the die is going to cut. So if you like, you may choose to do a bit more coloring and just fill in more of the areas around the outside. And here I'll just do this lightest color. That way, regardless of how you die cut, it will eliminate the white. Okay, and I think doing that with a light color is usually a nice way to do it. And doing it at the end works well because you don't have to think how many different colors, and do it once with one light shade. So let me go back to this pop-up card, and with this one we did a simple die cut structure in the middle from the die cuts where you have all the a la carte options, and I didn't want to do that much coloring for all of these different layers. So while I colored these with the Copic markers, I stamped these other ones on some printed papers and some of my creative palette background papers like this one. These were just some darker ones, and then just coming back in with a color pencil on a little bit to emphasize a bit of color in the centers. That was really all it needed. And this is the real extravagant way here to make a very full peacock using 4 of the big shapes there of all of the spread out beautiful peacock feathers. This reminds me of an interesting story. When I was in Hawaii and we went to the palace, they had this ball gown that had this whole train of peacock feathers. It was the most amazing dress, and it had been worn by someone there at one of the balls that they had at the palace, and later it had been sold and it had been somewhere else in Europe, I believe, and they brought it back. And it was just an amazing thing to see all of these peacock feathers trailing along behind this gown. You really wouldn't want to get your dress stepped on in that case, would you? But peacock feathers are certainly amazing and beautiful. So I hope all of these ideas will help you make the most of your Poised Peacock stamps and dies.